and welcome to our workshop to make this little tiny doll's house. Before we begin on the kit, I just want to look at some techniques that we can use to produce some really nice paint finishes. So if you'd like to take the tags out of the bag, we'll begin. Take some scrap paper and place the abranet furry side down. Take the 3 tags. On the first one, just write a number 1 and set it aside. On the second one, I just want you to rub it across the abranet so that the grain of the wood runs along the line of the abranet. Just do that several times and write a number 2. And just place that aside and do the same again with the next one down and write a number 3. Just tap the abranet just to reveal the dust below, and with your scrap paper just fold that up like that and put it in the bin. You now need to take the 3 tags, some Crafters acrylic paint. I'm using a flat synthetic paintbrush. You need to use a decent paintbrush, and all I want you to do is just paint across the tag. You don't need to cover all of it. And do the same on all 3 of them and just set them aside and leave them to dry. 2 and 3 which have been abraneted, and you'll feel that the paint is a lot smoother. On number 1 the paint's raised the grain of the wood. Take the sponge that's in the bag and set tag number 1 aside and set tag number 2 aside, and just with a sponge just on the corner just rub across the painted wooden surface. You'll notice that that's given the wood a real nice flat sheen. Taking your kit and the sheet of components, I want you actually to take the top rows, take them across the abranet as you did before on top of a scrap piece of paper. If you have any burr on the wood, just take a small pair of sharp scissors and just cut anything off, and if necessary just very gently take across the sandpaper, but don't do it too much because you don't want to alter the shape and size of the wood pieces. Now you'll notice here that the wood's been grooved, and that's to take the floors. If you feel that that needs cleaning out a little bit, you can make yourself a little sanding tool, and you've got a strip of wood in the kit that was loose. Just put a little bit of glue on one side and then just attach it to the sandpaper, and we'll just lay that on top of there. Just press it down. Just let it dry for a minute, and then if you just take your craft knife across like that and move that, you've got a small sanding tool, and you'll find that that will just fit very nicely inside the groove, and you can turn it round just to sand that out. You need to do that on both pieces. You need to take the door frame and glue it on top of the door front so that the smaller square is up at the top, and just leave that to dry. Now it can be quite tricky picking up some of these little tiny pieces, so you'll notice in your pack you've got a piece of wood and a pin. If you just actually cut the head off the pin using some wire cutters and just set that aside, just put a little bit of glue on the flat end of the pin and just thread that into the hole and just press down just very carefully. You've now got a little tool if you need to. Do be careful with that. I recommend that when you've finished all of this you pull the pin out and throw it away. You now need to start painting. The 2 roof pieces here can paint any colour. I've painted them white just on one side because one side's not going to be seen. The interior colour really isn't going to be particularly seen, but it's a way of priming the wood because I'm going to wallpaper it. But it is a good idea to use a light colour. So on one side where you've got the grooves of the side pieces, you need to paint those white or a pale colour. And then on the edges and on the other side, once that's dry, you need to paint it your exterior colour. So that's the side pieces. The back piece, you'll notice that one side is chamfered and the chamfer goes downwards. On the side that's smaller, that's your exterior colour. On the bigger side, that's your interior colour. You've got your 2 floor pieces. Now only one side of those needs to be painted for the ceilings because the other side can be left plain, as that will be covered in flooring. The base piece, I've just painted one side of that and the edge because that's for the house to sit on. And of course the front piece, you need to paint one side an interior colour, which I've painted white, and the other one I've painted, which is the shorter side, I've painted my exterior colour. You've got the chimney, and you've got the little chimney cap. The windows, now again I've painted those with acrylic paint. I want you to paint, one side is slightly darker and one side is lighter, and if you paint the lighter colour then you won't get any of the burnt edge of the laser coming off in your paint. So I need you to paint the whiter side of the laser cut windows. I've literally just almost dry brushed white paint on those, and literally all I did was put some paint on my brush and took a lot of it off and just sort of like stippled on the top. And then the door and the frame and the back of the door I've actually painted with a different colour. So ideally paint one side, maybe the lighter side first of all, let it thoroughly dry, and then paint your other side and the edges your darker colour. Now once everything's dry, you need to take your scourer and make sure you use a clean part of the scourer and use the lighter colour first, and just scour over the painted pieces. Always keep them flat, and then nothing is going to actually break, and you can see straight away that's smoothing out the paint and giving it a really nice soft sheen. So you need to do that with all the pieces. Once you've done that, you can turn them over and do the same on the darker side. The windows and the door and maybe the chimney and the little cap maybe don't look quite as nice as they should do. So the best thing to do with that is to fold over the piece of paper that I've given you that tells you which pieces are which. Turn over the painted side on top of the paper, put your finger over the top and just rub over the paper. So the painted part of the window has been rubbed over the paper. When you turn it round, you'll notice that that's really smoothed down the paint and given it quite a nice sheen. So you need to do the same now with the chimney, the doors and the rest of the windows. You're now at a stage where you're ready to construct the house. So if you take the back piece and just along the two long edges just run a little line of glue like that, and then just glue that between the two sides. Just leave that to dry, and then you're going to run a little line of glue along one long edge and the two short edges of the two floors, and you're actually going to glue those in so that the painted white side faces downwards because they're the ceilings. While you're waiting for the glue to dry, you can now go on to the floors. So take the sheet. This has been printed out on bank paper, which is 50-gram weight, and I've actually, my inks on my computer are water-based, so to colour it we need to use something that isn't water-based, not to make the inks run. So the best thing to use is a little bit of shoe polish, and that will give you a nice waxed floorboard. So if you just rub some shoe polish over the top, you can see that gives that really nice finish. So I'm going to do that one brown, and then I've got some black shoe polish here, and I'm going to try another one black. You've actually got 3 floors that are going to need floorboards on, so you can have a little practice. You have got extras as to which colours you would like. Glue the doll's house on top of the base so that the base overlaps each side and is flush with the back, and then set that aside and leave it to dry. If you take the front of the house, turn it over so that the front is actually facing downwards. You now need to glue in the windows and the door. Now if you dry fit them first of all, what actually happens is the door front fits face down in the opening. You can cut yourself a little piece of acetate if you like, just to fit in for the glass, and then the door back sits on the back like that. The same with the windows. If you drop the window in so that the facing side faces downwards, cut yourself a little piece of acetate again, and then put another window in, this time with the right side facing forward. Right, that's the doll's house front finished. You can see all the windows are flush at the front and just very slightly. I've trimmed down the floors to size, and I'm now just going to glue those into place. So literally I just kept trimming them down just till I had got the right fit. Now the best way to glue those in is using a glue stick. Oops, don't use too much glue. You don't really want to get the bubbles on it because then that actually shows them inside. Just put it into position. There's a little block of wood in here for you just to use that, just to smooth that out. There we are. And then just repeat that procedure with the other two. The downstairs wallpaper is virtually printed to the right size. The upstairs wallpaper just needs to be trimmed down widthways just a little bit. I'm just applying the glue. Now if you get one end, if you place that inside and manage to actually line up one end of the wallpaper with the wall, it's a lot easier to do it that way. So just catch it that way, and then just with your finger just press it down on the inside. Use your little block just to make sure that it's nice and neat in the corner. Keep pressing it down and in the other corner like that. Now once you get to the other end, you can either cut it with the scissors, or once it's dry you can just slide in the wood piece again and just go along the top of it with your craft knife. Take the roof pieces on the side that you actually painted for the edges and 2 mm inwards from each short end and 4 mm from one long end, either paint the colour of the roof tiles, because that little bit is seen. If you look under here, you actually see that after the roof's been laid. Take the roof tiles and paint on the opposite side a slate colour. Trim down some of the tiles like this just to the end so that you've got a small section. Now this one at the end here, that's actually for the ridge tile, so you need to get a craft knife and a ruler and just score along the central line and then just cut that one out. For the ridge tile, just take the scissors, again everything attached, and just cut the first one. You're going to fringe the first lot of tiles just by cutting up this one as I've done previously. You can see this I've cut down and then I've just trimmed it to size, so you need to carry on doing that till you've got about 18 or 19 of those. Take your roof pieces and you're going to take the shorter one first of all. This is for the back roof. Now at the end where you've actually got the extra section painted in, you need to turn it over and you need to glue one of the strips on top. If you turn it over, it just needs to overlap the wood piece probably by about 0.5 mm. Turn it back over again. I've glued that into place. Just apply a little bit more glue along the top, not too much because you don't want it to overlap. You're going to take another strip and lay it on top. Actually, where the lines were cut before, you're going to just slide it along a little bit, so you're actually laying the strip on top but alternating where the tiles start. So basically you've actually just got the width of half a tile and then another piece. Now you need to carry that on all the way up to the top so that you're actually left as you get to the top with a full. I've continued to do that on that piece and then on the front roof piece as well, and you can see here, if you can see on the camera, that it's a full piece that's laid at the top. I've trimmed it down just so that a small section is overlapping like you have got at the front, maybe 0.5 mm to 1 mm. And then I've painted it with my slate coloured paint. Take the back roof piece, which is the shorter of the two pieces, the narrower one, and actually glue onto the back of the house so that it overlaps equally on each side and down at the bottom. If you take the front roof piece, you'll notice that that sits on the top against that, but at the moment it will just slide off. So if you take the ridge piece and just fold it so that where you actually have the scored line, that's up at the top, and you need to glue that onto the top of the roof piece. The roof now looks a little bit flat, so we're trying to give it a bit of depth. So I've got some white acrylic paint here. I've put some on my brush and I'm taking as much off as I can because I want to dry brush the roof. So if you can see, there's hardly any paint left on my brush. So I'm going to take the back roof, always work at the back first, and just work, I'm flicking the brush up towards me, and you can see that it starts to accentuate where I've actually cut those tiles. Now it's very, very subtle and it almost looks like you've not done anything, but if you just keep on, maybe take a little bit more paint and then take it all off again, so virtually I would liken it to a whisper of paint. I'm going to do the same with the front now. To complete the project, I've glued the window ledges onto the front of the doll's house, and you can see here I've actually glued the chimney and the cap onto the ridge, and then that just makes it a little bit easier to hold on top of the house. The roof and the front is removable. Thanks for joining in with my workshop. I hope you've enjoyed it.